So welcome to episode, where are we? 5, I think, of the Hot Breach podcast. Quite a lot to talk about today. There's quite a bit of Rainbow Six news, and then various other games that are now, again, available in beta. Call of Duty, Battlefield, we're going to be talking about that. Maybe a bit of a discussion about one-hit kill headshots in multiplayer games in general, and Siege specifically, because that is such a large feature of that game. We're going to be talking a little bit about DreamHack Montreal, which was basically almost a precursor to the start of the new Pro League season, which starts off tomorrow. So we've had that this weekend. Quite some surprising results from there, lots to talk about. And then we'll finish off, as always, in a sort of question and answer session. So, to kick things off, maybe let me go through a little bit of news. First of all, we have Twitch Prime coming out. Well, Twitch Prime loot drops specifically. Let me get those up on screen for you now. There we go. So if you have Twitch Prime, and if you have linked your Uplay account with your Twitch Prime account, you will have up to 8 packs. Well, 8 packs available now in September, plus a legendary chibi charm. Then 4 packs in October and another 4 packs for November. So if you do have that, make sure that your accounts are linked. Make sure that you take advantage of that. I think it's a nice scheme to have. Definitely an incentive for those who are already using Twitch Prime to connect the accounts and take advantage of the drops we'll be getting. Guys, have you unlocked those? Have you seen some of the stuff going on?
Yes, I did. I initially kind of messed it up and couldn't get it to work, but after giving it another go, I ended up getting it and opened all 8 that I had available to me, and got some decent stuff. It's all, have you noticed, it's all super untactical stuff, like really bright colors, stuff that you're going to have a disadvantage if you use, but it's still stuff that's pretty cool to use. I'm glad they did it that way, so that way, you know, there's no argument whatsoever that anybody could make that if I don't have Twitch Prime, I'm at a disadvantage for this, because anything that I've seen in that game is a clear disadvantage in equipping it, other than maybe like the charms, obviously.
Twitch Prime to win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the exact opposite. I mean, I think one of the things is bright orange, then there's a bright red, bright green, and one other primary color. So you're not going to be hiding with this stuff. It's nice looking, especially the gun skins, I find. But definitely not. And I have to say, it's a good thing you mentioned this. I had some issues as well. For me, I was logging into the website because you need to reconnect your Twitch Prime and your Uplay accounts, even if you've done it before for the Twitch drops during streams. You have to do it again from a separate site. And I was trying to do it through the Chrome browser, and it just wasn't working. It was just, it would crash at the end and say, there's a problem every time. And I just then did it on the Microsoft browser, and it worked instantly. So if you have been having trouble, for me personally, trying out a new browser was the solution.
Yeah, Microsoft Edge. By the way, we are sponsored by them as well.
Let me say something real quick, because, you know, okay, I'll say this. In the last year, I haven't had anything that works on Chrome that doesn't work on Edge, but I've had several things that work on Edge but don't work on Chrome. And I've gotten made fun of before for having an Edge browser tab up in like a capture where I've done like a screen capture in part of my video. So I just want to throw that out there.
Exactly the same. I mean, I haven't been using Edge really, but I think sort of they made a change quite a while ago that makes it actually really similar to Chrome. So it's become a decent browser, and there, exactly as you're saying, there's issues in Chrome when I can't use certain web pages that do work in Edge. So it's definitely my number 2 browser for sure. So next item of news, I think, because that's about what we can say about that. And that is that for 2-factor authentication, there is now a reward. So we know already that by the next season, 2-factor authentication, or 2-step verification, as they're calling it as well, will be mandatory if you want to play in ranked. And now, if you go in early, if you set up 2-factor authentication on your Uplay account, you will get a free Thermite bundle, which includes a uniform, a hat, and a gun skin. So yeah, go ahead and give that a go as well. It makes your account safer, and you get rewarded for it. Good news, I think.
It is good. It is good. Do the people on console get that?
Yeah, everyone can get that. Absolutely.
But
Because-
console doesn't have two-factor authorization.
Yeah, that's what I was
Okay,
gonna say.
then
Yeah.
let me roll that back quickly. Maybe not.
There's
Because-
been, yeah. Go ahead, Pete.
No, I was just going to say, when they put that tweet out, I saw the tweet, and before I even expanded it, I thought the first comment is going to be, what do we get on console? Which is not an unreasonable thing to say. And I expanded it, and there was dozens of comments, what about us on console? So maybe they should just give that away to console people for free, and then on PC you do your two-factor.
That's one of the solutions. On the other hand, I suppose there's the argument like that's an incentive for you to activate two-factor authentication. Why should you have to do something for it if you're a PC player and you get it anyway on console? There's no right or wrong solution here, and I think whichever way they choose, there's going to be people that aren't happy. But I didn't even think of that, of course. Very good point.
I think what you get on console is you've played without hackers for the entire time that this game has been out. So there's that. But no, I get it. They probably they probably should. Yeah, when this is over, when that deadline hits, let's just roll it out to all the console players. That would be fair in my opinion.
That's what I would do.
Yep, there's a fair argument for that, and I suppose at the end of the day, if everyone gets access to it, why not? Next piece of news, there was a ban wave on the 31st of August. Whoever was playing might have seen that. It was quite a significant one, and if you're on Twitter, you might have seen people posting clips of that. Always great news to see when people who make the game less enjoyable for others are being removed, even if it is temporarily. But with this one, there was a bit of a hiccup. So there was a ban for boosted players. Boosted players were targeted, and then they had to roll it back because they found that then players were included that had been flagged as playing with cheaters and banned, even though they hadn't. So they were unfairly and unjustifiably banned. And I think the issue there was because some people had been playing with people who'd been banned for toxicity, and they then got basically rolled into this entire, ban wave. But it's been resolved so far, so they unbanned everyone again, and then they went through the list, filtered out those who had been wrongly banned, and then rebanned. And basically, to make it up, all of those who were banned in error are getting a 30-day renown booster. So I guess if you were banned by accident, by playing with, by being squadded up with toxic players, good for you. You were lucky there.
That's okay then, isn't it?
Yeah, why not?
Fair enough.
And also, go ahead.
That's kind of the worst case scenario, is to have a false positive in that situation, you know, to kick somebody, because there's a lot that comes with that. You know, you guys remember whenever Macy J was
twice.
falsely banned, and then there's, you know, a lot that goes around that. I believe there was a content creator, or at least a kind of a player with some notoriety that was falsely banned in this round, and I remember seeing some stuff there. So that's unfortunate. With that said, I mean, it's going to happen, and the fact that you only heard, you know, a couple cases pop up here and there means to me that it's still well worth it in my mind.
Yeah, and also obviously this happened all the way to the 31st of August, so really just before the new season, and one of the consequences was that the MMR and the rank for the season was basically deleted for those players, so they didn't get their charms for their ranked level for that season, and they didn't have an MMR rating at the end, so that also has been reinstated. So the world has been set right, and there's been a little bit of a sort of reward to make up for that. Which, yeah, at least that. It's all, and hopefully they'll sort of be refining their process and make sure that that issue doesn't happen in future. So yeah, so much for sort of the direct news. Maybe let's talk a little bit about Grim Sky. There have been some teething issues, I think. There were problems on the test server, which sadly have rolled over. New problems, and in part also old problems that are now plaguing players a lot. I've seen a lot of that, especially on Twitter, a lot of people complaining to the Rainbow Six account about especially connection issues. I think, Flank, you've probably been affected out of the three of us most since you play literally daily.
Yeah, I personally haven't had the matchmaking error issue. But one of the guys that I play with on a daily basis, Toxic Jake, he has. So I mean, literally, if there's four of us partied up, we will queue, and the queue time's longer than normal. Something definitely happened to the matchmaking this season because the player count's higher than ever. Well, higher than it was last season, and the matchmaking is taking significantly longer. But I'm not getting the errors, and eventually be put in a game. But once he joins our queue, matchmaking error every single time, and then maybe like once out of every 10 times we might get a game with him. It's extremely frustrating, and I've heard all kinds of things from changing your DNS settings, which he's tried, to it's a problem with Comcast, to it's a problem with the Microsoft Azure servers or whatever. And it's really unfortunate. But the most frustrating part is that this was in the TTS. These matchmaking errors were in the TS. That's when this started for him. Last season, no issue with him as far as the matchmaking errors. In the TS, it was this problem the whole time, and then it just got rolled into the live servers. And that's really unfortunate because they had to have known that was there.
It's really weird as well, because if you think sort of the content update, what we've received is a new map, a slightly changed map, and a couple of new operators. How does that translate into broken connection issues?
Is it possible that the two-factor authorization, although it's not enabled yet, has something on the back end that was already put in place, and that's causing something to be a little bit wonky there?
I started activating that last season, and I never had any issues. I don't quite understand it, is the honest thing. And one of the other things we're seeing as well is that there's reports certainly of old glitches that have been patched in the past re-emerging, which again is like, how are those coming back with the content update? It's unfortunate, because otherwise I think a great season with great updates, and again it starts out kind of on a bit of a rocky note.
It seems like every season there's going to be some bugs like that. I don't know exactly how prevalent these bugs are, because you see stuff on Twitter, but that could be a one-time thing. I'm hearing reports of invisibility glitch, that the Montaigne glitch, and I know specifically that the Montaigne glitch that existed towards the end of last season was patched. So at this point, I'm taking all of it with a grain of salt. At this point, me personally, I've been playing every single day, and I have not encountered a visibility glitch. I have not encountered a Montaigne glitch. I've played on both PS4 and PC at this point. I have encountered on PS4 something with Pulse, to where when you have his cardiac sensor out, there seems to be some type of bug. When you move with it out, it kind of like resets the scan. I'm not sure what's going on there, but that does not exist on PC.
It's a rework.
Yeah, maybe. And then the matchmaking. Those are the two things that I personally have experienced.
Okay. Well, so much for the news.
I mean, no major news there. New patch comes out and there's a load of bugs, basically.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's not something huge going to happen every week, but those are sort of the Rainbow Six related news items that we have for this week. Other games, though, have come out into new betas, and I think there's quite some bits to talk about. Earlier, Flank, you were mentioning that you were playing the Call of Duty Battle Royale mode. Tell us a little bit about that.
It came out about 2 hours before the podcast started, so I played it probably a total. I think I played like 3 games of squads, and then I played about 3 games of solo, and I'm extremely impressed. It has definitely exceeded my expectations. I'm playing it on PS4. It's not available on any other platform right now, but it will be coming to Xbox and PC later in the week. And I mean, it really reminds me a lot of PUBG, but with Call of Duty's gun mechanics. The gunfights felt really crisp and clean. To me, it seemed to be running okay. I like the depth of it compared to Fortnite, where You have separate weapons with separate attachments, all the way from sights to stocks to fast mags. So there's that layer of depth there compared to, in Fortnite, you only have a gun with, 4 levels of rarity, basically. This has that rarity as far as weapons, as well as weapons with different attachments. So if you pick up like a really rare weapon, it might already have those attachments that come with it. That's what makes it rare. And I'll have to look into if it's stat altering as far as the rarity of the weapons, but there are a lot of different stuff. One cool aspect that I noticed is that you can pick up perks. So they're little boxes and you pick them up and you can store them in your inventory. And whenever you want to use it, you select it. It takes about 4 or 5 seconds to actually activate by holding down the button, but they're different stuff. So one thing allows you to snipe and hold your breath longer, so you get less weapon sway. One thing allows you to move around silently. One thing allows you to hear footsteps louder. One thing allows you to, it gives you a notification when somebody's looking down sights at you. So a lot of really interesting stuff there that could turn out to be annoying, but could actually add another element and a neat twist to a battle royale.
And those are just little pickups?
Yeah, it's just loot throughout the map. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I was watching your stream earlier. I haven't played it yet. I think it only just came out today, right?
Yes.
So it's on PlayStation 4 at the moment. Is it an open beta? Can anyone just go and download it?
No, you had, at this point, you would have had to have pre-ordered the game in order to play the beta. It'll be open, I believe, later in the week, but right now it's closed.
Dude, I was blown away by what I saw. I thought it looked really good because obviously Battle Royale is just a thing that everyone's trying to cram into their game at the moment. But to me, it looked like they've put a lot of love and thought into that mode. I was watching your stream and then I flicked over and watched a bit of Dr. Disrespect flying around in a little bird helicopter. And even the, they're not using hit scan mechanics, are they, for when you shoot at people? So there it seems to be like bullet drop and leading your shot. So that's a new thing. I think overall, I was really impressed with what I saw, but I think the graphics looked a little bit. That's the only thing.
Yeah, it did look a little bit dull to me. We'll have to see what it looks like on PC. But I am amazed that you got 84 players with the Call of Duty mechanics. Nothing looks shortchanged in that respect, except for maybe the graphics are downgraded a bit. Keep in mind, I was playing it on a regular PS4. I'm not playing it on a PS4 Pro. Maybe that would be a little bit different. But even with the downgraded graphics a bit, I still say I'm impressed. Like I expected to hop into a helicopter and be like, okay, we'll see if this actually works. No issues whatsoever. Mechanics were good. The responsiveness was crisp. Everything felt right. Hopped on an ATV. Okay, we'll see how much this glitches into this tree or this mountain. Everything worked. Everything felt good. I was really surprised.
Vehicles are also quite a new thing for Call of Duty, right? You did not had that before.
Absolutely.
Interesting. So they've done well to get that off the ground and working in one go. That's impressive.
Yeah.
What about the maps? Like, sort of, if I think about Battle Royale, normally I think about huge open maps with maybe a few urban areas, but mostly countryside. What do they look like in Call of Duty so far?
Feels a lot like PUBG's maps. PUBG's original map, I would say, is what I'm reminded of. Even when you're looking at the overview of the map, it looks very similar to the overview of looking at a PUBG map. But the map, basically, what they did was they took a lot of classic Call of Duty multiplayer maps, and they implemented them as separate towns within the map. So you have separate towns with grassland or hills in between. So it's really cool. You go into one part and you're in Raid, a classic Black Ops 2 multiplayer map, and then you go around there and you loot that map, and then you leave there and you're going up a mountain, and then you go into the firing range. It's really well done. Really impressed with that. Very, very creative. Well done.
And I think in the main game, though, you do have hit scan, right? There's no bullet flight time, no bullet drop. So they have two completely separate mechanics within one game. Is that maybe a risk when people jump from one mode to the other? It will feel very different, no?
Well, also, you got matchmaking will be completely different. Surely the Battle Royale will be on a server, but isn't Call of Duty matchmaking a combination of server and host?
Yes. Yeah,
So
that would be one difference. I think Obviously, maybe it's me playing it for 2 hours and be really hyped up right now. To me, after playing the regular multiplayer and the Battle Royale is Black Ops 4. This is where they put their time, effort, and money. I'm not saying that they didn't put any effort into multiplayer, but you just mentioned, I mean, there's 2 completely new mechanics in Call of Duty Battle Royale that had to have been ironed out and worked on extensively. That's with vehicles and bullet drop. So yeah, I get what you're saying there. For me to go from playing a game of team deathmatch into Battle Royale, I'm playing by a different set of rules, and that is going to be kind of strange.
But that's impressive as well, you know, because it looks like they've spent a lot of time getting that right. I was impressed. Did you see any zombies?
I didn't. I didn't go to the zombies part of the map, and I don't know if there is a zombies part of the map, but there's a place called Asylum that has, you know, a zombie, which is a zombies map. But is that the only place that the zombies exist? I don't know.
I'm not sure of that, but I understand that is where they are. Okay, they leave that area.
I didn't go there, so.
Oh right.
Okay, so that's then maybe more DayZ-like, that you have NPC zombies mixed in with the open world Battle Royale style gameplay.
Yeah, but keep in mind, there was one of the solos I played. I finished 3rd, and I got to the final circle, and I did not encounter any zombies. So it might be something where if the final circle ends on that part, then you will be dealing with zombies the entire time. But if you're somewhere else on the map, you might not, which could be kind of interesting.
You know, at the end of the day, it is very Call of Duty. They've not just thrown a bunch of zombies in. It's what they have been doing for so long. So I'm on board with that.
And you know what's crazy? It makes so much sense to play it and to think about it now. It's obvious. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the first AAA studio that we are seeing release a Battle Royale?
I think so.
So I know it might seem obvious, but is it a case of the reason I'm impressed with this right now is because we are seeing a AAA studio who this is their bread and butter. They're good at this. This is what they do. There's a reason they're a AAA studio, putting the time and effort into it, and this is the result. And it's kind of a shame that, you know, the indie studios who don't have near the resources of these AAA studios are the pioneers of this genre. But now, is it going to be a case where we see the AAA studios take it to the next level and show us how it's really done?
That's how it goes, I guess. And in fairness to the indie studios, they've done well out of what they've done so far. I mean, if I think about sort of the PUBG experience, how long was that game in pre-release? Like years? What, more than a year? It was just out forever. And I mean, anything in pre-release is kind of sort of an okay but not great experience. And then even when they went into release, it still wasn't polished. And they're still working on it, which, credit to them, is a good thing. But I still go into PUBG and I just think like, this doesn't still feel as if it's quite ready. It still feels like a pre-release game. It's still not quite there. But you look at what they've managed to achieve out of that, the amount of games they've sold, the amount of money they've made, and you can say that they have had adequate compensation for being the first mover in that space. Are they going to get crowded out now? I think we've already partially seen that with the rise of Fortnite, and maybe now once studios that have millions of dollars to put behind a game come in, we're going to see that not only the sort of the audience move onwards, but we're also going to see just a better experience for the audience. So I think as players, it can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I think the hardcore PC players will probably stick with PUBG over Call of Duty, though I can see some people giving Call of Duty a go. Like when the CoD Battle Royale comes out, when the Battlefield Battle Royale comes out, PUBG is surely going to take a hit, an initial hit. It's whether they come back, because I feel the PUBG experience is very different to what I saw on stream with what Flanked was playing. They do look, it's a very different take on Battle Royale. So I feel that PUBG does a more kind of hardcore Battle Royale experience. From what I saw of CoD, it looks more sort of fun and arcadey, and a lot more going on with helicopters and all that sort of stuff. So I think PUBG would be fine in the long run, but at the end of the day, PUBG have to start treating their player base a little bit better. I know they're doing this fixed PUBG thing at the moment, but then it wasn't all that long ago they did the, what was it called, Battle Pass or something like that, and it was zero value for money in that. I bought that just to see what it was all about, and there was a load of cosmetics that you unlock them, but they were limited time, so you pay, I forget the exact amount, something like $10 or whatever, and then on top of that, you have to do all these challenges to claim the things that were in that limited time event. So you don't just get them, and then some of them aren't permanent. I just feel like it was a little bit shady, business practice-wise, what they did there. And they've broken a few promises along the way. I mean, when they were in early access, they said that there wouldn't be any something like microtransactions or loot boxes, and of course they came along and the whole loot box thing anyway. You know, there's no PUBG doesn't have any kind of progression system. There's nothing. There's no sort of working towards anything. You unlock these loot boxes, and half the time you then need to go and buy a key to see what's in them. It's a bit shady, I think.
And is it, what, $5 a pop, I think?
I'm not sure. I think it's a little bit less than that. I think it's like $1.20 or £1.20 in the UK for the key. For the key for the box. I think it might depend though.
Maybe they're charging me extra. I thought they were just ridiculously priced for what they are.
Don't you agree with me though? That game is a little. I really enjoy that game. Other than Siege, I've played no end of that this year in 2018. It's one of my most played games, but I just think that it could be so much better. Yeah. It's a bit anti-consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's the arguments being made that instead of improving the game, they were pushing it onto console to sell more copies on there. And I've never played it on Xbox, but I hear the experience is appalling. So there's that issue. And yeah, exactly like you said, they were still talking about there will never be microtransactions and then these locked loot boxes. I'm a super casual player. I don't unlock that many cases, and I have loads of them already. It almost feels as if 2/3 of the cases I get right now are locked, and there's just so many different types of them already, and they are expensive to unlock. It's dumb. Yeah. And what do you get out of it?
I played with the Black Ops 4 Blackout, I would call that in between Fortnite and PUBG, because I think you're right, Pete, that PUBG is a more hardcore experience, and I think that Black Ops 4 really fits nicely in between those, between the Fortnite cartoony, very simplistic as far as the loot items and the different variety you can get there. I know I'm not calling Fortnite simplistic because there's depth there. I get that with the building and everything, but I think that the Black Ops kind of fits in between there. And the thing with PUBG that's always gotten me is I have never felt good about the feedback of gunfights, meaning that every time I get into a gunfight in PUBG, I don't feel like I had any type of feedback while that gunfight was going on to tell me, am I winning? Am I getting hits on them? You know what I mean? So it's always felt really messy in that respect. And Call of Duty, again, from the short time that I played, the gunfights feel really nice with the hit markers and everything. I like it.
Yeah, but the thing with hit markers, because I said that on your stream earlier, I think hit markers in a battle royale experience, I'm not sure if that's necessarily a good thing, because if someone's hiding behind a tree and you're getting hit, it's like having stabilizers. It's just it's kind of slightly easy mode. I think that there should be other kind of triggers that tell you that you're getting hits on board. Say in PUBG, you've got to look for blood splatter, and I think I prefer that to a hit marker. But that said, I think this, from what I've seen, I think it's going to be massive. I think it's got every chance of being really big, and from what I can tell, it looks like they put a lot of love into it. So I'm definitely going to get the new Call of Duty.
One of the things you mentioned as well, Pete, though, is that there's a lack of progression. I think that's kind of a feature of Battle Royale, because everyone always starts every round with nothing.
Does it have to be, though? I mean, you could still have different skins and different challenges and different, that are available to everyone, not just someone that pays $10 for a battle pass. You could have a reward where a challenge where if you get 10 people in a round, you get a new suit or something that you can put on your character, something like that. It doesn't have to be pay to win in any way or give you an advantage like you're running around in a full ghillie suit and I'm running around
you
in...
drop with a pistol or something already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of pay to win, Pete, you made a point before we went live that the Black Ops 4 beta for Blackout looks great, but don't ruin it with pay to win. And I cannot echo that enough. Don't even think about it, Activision. It looks good so far. Do not put any stat altering items in that game whatsoever that is not available to every single player naturally. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah, that would be the nail in the coffin for it, wouldn't it? I mean, that would create enough sort of negative publicity that people will steer clear of it. They don't need to do it. People will go in there. Fortnite have set out what the business model is for a game like this, and you just need to be pumping out skins because people enjoy it. Pumping out skins and different emotes or whatever. People enjoy that side of things. You don't need to have a bazooka that I can buy for £2.99.
Right. And the thing that I'm thinking about right now, this is going to put Call of Duty esports in a interesting situation potentially. You know, what if the esport is still going to focus on the hardcore the hardpoint game mode, the search and destroy game mode, and it's not going to feature battle royale as far as I know. So is it possible that you're going to have a case where the esport is then playing this game that very few people actually even play, and meanwhile the battle royale is a raging success but isn't represented competitively at all?
I think if it does well, we might possibly see it go into a competitive scene as well. Because I've seen really good competitive games of PUBG. PUBG, of all things, has actually had some really good events where they get a whole bunch of people to a LAN event and play with commentators, and it's surprisingly competitive. Because you always think like, well, something like a Battle Royale style game where everyone drops in with nothing, you have to loot for your weapons, you have to loot for your attachments. It's by its nature, it's kind of random, and there is a luck element built in depending on what weapon you find, how quickly you find it, and so on and so forth. But that recent PUBG tournament was surprisingly competitive, and I was really impressed with how well it actually works. I would have never imagined that it could, and maybe they can do that for Call of Duty as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what is it? Search and destroy that they usually have.
Search and destroy, hardpoint, and then usually one other game mode. So it kind of varies.
I would suggest they just set out as per usual with the competitive season, as they would do with any new game, and then see how popular the Battle Royale mode is in time. Interesting though, because obviously the Fortnite Battle Royale mode is iterated on all the time. But Call of Duty comes out every year, so does that mean that the next Call of Duty, which will come out in 12 months' time, will it have Battle Royale? Will it be the same Battle Royale map? I mean, it seems to me it would be wise to just have a separate game client with Battle Royale that's free to play. Obviously, then it's not going to push up the sales of the base Call of Duty game, which is what they would like to do. But if they had a persistent Battle Royale world like Fortnite and PUBG, I think it would be better in the long run.
I don't disagree.
Each Call of Duty, they've got 3 different developers, right? Is it Sledgehammer Games, Treyarch, and Infinity Ward? So are the other team going to put it in next year? And if it's the same map, you'd be disappointed if it was the same map, right? Because you're buying a new game.
Yeah.
I suppose they could add like cosmetics or stuff that could be added. A new map is maybe, I'd see that as a sort of double-edged sword, because while it would be nice to have that in and just include it into the Battle Royale experience, would it then start splitting up the community? Would you then start getting into issues with some players being on one map, some on the other, some on both? So I don't know. I mean, it would be nice if they could expand it with new vehicles, new weapons, new maps. But if they're going to bring that in under a different banner, produced by a different publisher or a different developer at the very least, yeah, would that risk doing exactly what everyone nowadays is trying to avoid, and that's splitting up the gaming community, splitting up the community for the game?
You know what's interesting? What we're not talking about right now, and that is the Battlefield 5 beta that's been going on all week. And to me, I know that this might be on the agenda for us to talk about later, but to me, this right here, this conversation we're having, is a microcosm for how Battlefield has gone as far as the hype, the promotion, the everything that goes along with it. To me, that this is just perfectly represented, because the Battlefield 5 beta has been going on this week, and they're just completely getting swept under the rug now because this blackout is such a huge deal, and it's on everybody's mind, and it's just gonna completely devour it. That's how I see it happening anyway.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's why they've, in my opinion, moved the release date of the game, because it was getting sandwiched, and it's just like you say, it's CoD have just come out and stole all Battlefield's thunder today.
Yeah.
And that's probably what they're worried about with the release of this game, because it's been a shambles leading up to this point. The amount of negative publicity about it, it's just unbelievable. I'm a bit worried about it, to be honest with you, because it's a fun game, but I don't think a lot of people are going to give it a chance.
Yeah, I would echo that. That is probably the most disappointing thing. I played a lot of Battlefield 1, really good times on that, and I was looking forward to it, and I still am. It's going to be a good game, and I played both of the alphas, I've played the beta. It is still Battlefield, it is still really enjoyable. But yeah, there's been, as we've discussed in past podcasts, the negative PR that kind of came around the whole issue with the cosmetics and the customization. That kind of has almost not so much of a conversation now anymore, now that the beta is out. But yeah, like you mentioned, the release of Battlefield has been pushed back, and part of that, I think, maybe is to do strategically with the sales, but then really, if possible, what you want to do is you want to be ahead. You want to be the first one out. And if possible, I think they would have done well. If they have anything to show for the Battle Royale mode, it would have been better for them to be able to show that. And actually, now that I'm actually just saying it out loud, I'm realizing maybe part of what derailed the whole PR campaign and marketing campaign for Battlefield 5 was that they started based on the timelines they had, but the technical issues they're having, which are now also probably feeding into the delay of the game, actually made it harder for them to feed into that program, because they had this reveal event and then it went quiet. No gameplay, no chance to play it, nothing to show off, nothing at all. And maybe it was just that it just wasn't technically ready, and that kind of sort of made the whole thing run out of steam. Because if you look at the beta now, there are technical issues with it, which I think make it quite clear that that's the reason, or certainly one of the main reasons it's getting delayed by, what is it, about a month or 6 weeks?
Yeah, I've heard that it's not running very well at all on consoles. And again, I just feel like amongst console players, there's not much excitement for this game at all. I think there's a lot of different reasons you could list for that. One being a beta that's underwhelming. Number two, I think that going to World War II is a mistake. I really do. Coming off of a World War I game, it would have made much more sense to come either to modern day or at the very latest Vietnam, because Vietnam you can still do a lot of really cool things with, and it hasn't been done recently. They just did CoD World War II a year ago, and you're going after a lot of that same player base. So I'm worried about this game.
Given the development timelines, I think that was just unfortunate. I think they were already well underway making a World War II game, and Call of Duty beat them to it. They just didn't know it was going to happen. This game has been in development for at least 2 years, possibly slightly more, and Call of Duty just made it halfway through developing Battlefield 5. A World War II game came out. So I think that's it. I see exactly what you're saying, but I think there's kind of more of an unfortunate accident rather than anything else. And I would fully agree with you what you're saying. I think Vietnam is an interesting sort of era because it's still kind of relatively simple combat. You don't really have that many night vision, heat vision. You don't have aircraft with laser-guided bombs and helicopters with laser-guided rockets and all of that. That's not there yet, but it's sort of advanced enough to be something more interesting than going back to the early part of the century. I think that if they'd done that, if they'd guessed it right, that would have been the one to go for, or modern. You're probably right there. Speaking about the experience, though, with the game, technical issues aside, I think for me personally, there's one problem that won't get fixed, that won't get changed, because it's a purposeful choice and it's actually working as intended, and that's the attrition system, as they call it. You have limited ammo, and the health regeneration is severely limited as well. If you get hit, you can't fully regenerate your health anymore without a med pack. The idea behind this being that it's trying to force more team gameplay, more squad gameplay. This has been part of the marketing, it's been part of their messaging. We want more team-based gameplay. We want to get people to work closer together. The very first game I went into, I was playing solo, came into a random squad. There was a medic in the squad, and he flat out refused to drop any health packs for me, which is something I recognize from Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1, getting ammo out of a support player was the running joke. You would never ever get ammo.
It's always been the same.
Especially in Battlefield 1, if you were an assault player and you were trying to fight a vehicle, a tank, you didn't have enough ammo to destroy it in one go. You needed a resupply, and you would just never ever get it. It's just a feature of Battlefield, and now you as the individual player are going to be punished for the shortcomings of your teammates. If they don't drop health for you, if they don't drop ammo for you, you're not going to be able to fight properly, because what, you spawn with like, it's 3 magazines now? That's two or three gunfights and you're done. Then you're ineffective and you're just waiting to die.
I've got, that's my chair squeaking, by the way, if anyone's wondering. I've got some opinions on that. I mean, the devs have come out and said, you're right, Rogue. I mean, attrition is something that they're not going to compromise on. That is a key aspect of what they want the game to be. So you're just going to kind of have to get used to it if you want to play it. So I don't think they're going to get rid of it, but they are going to tweak it. I think they're looking at potentially spawning you with one of those little med bags, so you could use that as the fight goes on, which is a help. And also they're looking at potentially spawning you with maybe an extra magazine, which would help. The idea of attrition I quite like, though I do think it needs to scale to be a little bit better. I think it is a little bit too little ammo to have from the beginning, because you find yourself not taking on some gunfights that perhaps you would. And I get it, they do want people to play, team play, improve team play as a squad. But I have to say, I've found that the most fun I've had is when I'm playing with friends, which I guess is no big surprise. Tell me something new, Pete. But if you are playing with random people solo queuing, actually it's not very fun to play, because they aren't really going to give you ammo. They aren't going to revive you. They're just going to run off, and they run around like headless chickens. You are fighting over, say, C flag, and then you die, and then you come to respawn, and all your squad are now just running around like headless chickens on the other end of the map. It's just like, what's the purpose of what you're trying to do? Are we trying to capture C? Or are we just going to run around and do nothing? So I do wonder if people just haven't adjusted. You know, maybe they will adjust given time to how you have to play it now, because you can't just go sit on a bridge and snipe all round. You're going to run out of ammo pretty quickly, and you're going to get one kill and you're going to be bottom of the scoreboard. If on the other end you're reviving people, taking out tanks and capping flags, you are guaranteed to be in the top 2 or 3 people on your team. And when people start to realise that that's how they progress in the game, it might have a positive effect on how they play it. But I have found it, so I'm kind of agreeing with you, I have found that if I'm playing with random people, it isn't a lot of fun at all, because they don't revive, they just run off. It's just like lemmings just running around, you know, without any purpose. But I kind of get where they're going with the attrition and trying to improve team play, because it has been getting worse and worse in Battlefields, and this is their way of tackling it. And I do understand what they're going for here, that you have to play close to your squad and fight over objectives, and I think that is a good thing. And that being said, all of that being said, when I'm playing with friends, I have a real good laugh. I really enjoy it, but playing with random people is like a trip to the dentist to have a tooth removed.
I played with my Siege squad the other day. We had 4 of us all playing. At that time, I was the only person who had already pre-ordered the game, and after we got done playing, every single one of them said they would be buying the game. So I think that speaks volumes into the game being fun and the attrition being part of that, and adding a level of depth to playing with the squad, and that's a good element. However, yeah, I mean, when you're playing solo, it's extremely frustrating. And here's a balancing question. So should one person have the capability to destroy a tank by themselves?
Yeah, but they've adjusted tanks, haven't they? They obviously you got the limited ammo, which I think was a thing in BF1, right? Because I didn't play it. It's been ages since I played it. Well, you see, you've got limited ammo, so you need to keep going back to ammo to resupply your tank. Just
right.
Like, plus, also they've changed the aiming mechanism, so it's much harder to get to just spin around and take someone out. So they have made tanks a little bit more sort of, I guess, skillful. I actually think tanks are harder to play in now. So, but
absolutely, they've nerfed them big time.
To your question, I think you can take a tank out on your own if you're near an ammo crate,
or if you, as assault, and correct me if I'm wrong here, have the launcher as well as the TNT and use both of those. Is that even possible? Can you? Yeah, you can carry both, can't you? Yeah. So if you have both and you used both to their maximum capability, I believe you would actually destroy a tank. But
yeah.
Here's what would be my balance suggestion there. Allow a support or a medic or somebody else to carry that launcher as well. If you don't want to make it to where if I land both of my shots right in the money, it doesn't destroy a tank, that's fine. But allow one of my other teammates, so that way if we're running an assault, a support, a medic, and a recon, we have the capability as a squad to take out a tank rather effectively.
Yeah.
That would be my balance suggestion.
They might do that.
I would be surprised if they didn't. That was Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1, you had the assault class, which had a rocket launcher, which had dynamite, and what else? An anti-tank grenade. They were the specialist anti-vehicle. But eventually, this wasn't, I think, there on launch. Eventually, the medics could have a grenade launcher that could also fire high explosive grenades, which were not great, but at least they did something against vehicles. The sniper had armor-piercing bullets that you could use. Sorry?
Was it called K bullets?
They were called K bullets, yes, exactly, which were basically a World War I version of armor-piercing bullets. And then what eventually became, I think, the best anti-armor class was actually the support, because if you had the mortar launcher and you put the high explosive rounds in there, they were extremely effective against vehicles, especially since you could use those from cover. So they kind of did that. Every class, like the best class was still the assault class, but in Battlefield 1, every class kind of had at least some ability to fight against vehicles. And I would expect to see something similar. Having said that, though, vehicles in Battlefield 1, certainly in the alpha, planes were pointless. They could do absolutely nothing. I think that's changed a bit. I think I've seen some people playing in the planes and actually doing some serious damage to ground infantry. The tanks as well. I mean, in Battlefield 1, as an individual player, you could solo a tank and you could play the entire match without dying once, and you could just rack up 40, 50 kills, and you could literally be carrying the team, holding down entire pushes. That was Battlefield 1. Vehicles were extremely powerful, to the point where they were sometimes almost impossible to deal with if they were played well and if there was a support repairing and so on and so forth. They've backed away from that a lot with Battlefield 5, to the point where, yes, even the tanks, certainly as much as I've played them, are challenging to stay alive in for very long. You've got the ammo running out. That Panzerfaust is ridiculous compared to the sort of anti-tank weapons in Battlefield 1 where you had to go prone to shoot them. It was a limited range, not easy to use. Now you have a thing, put it on your shoulder, bang. And they are just, especially in an urban map, and I would say both of the beta maps right now are kind of urban, even the Scandinavian one. As a tank, you're not doing much. You're not really having much success once players unlock that Panzerfaust rocket launcher.
I'm not being funny, right? But have you experienced this? This is what I've experienced. I hop in a tank. The entire enemy team has a Panzerfaust and is coming straight for me. They have a tank. I'm the only clown running around with a Panzerfaust trying to take it out. I swear to God, today, that is my experience. Oh, I'll hop in the tank. Maybe I can record some gameplay for YouTube. My God, they're swarming all over me. Rockets everywhere. Then the next time, they've got a tank, and I'm the only guy trying to take the bloody thing out. Unbelievable.
Remember that? Yeah. Remember the time we were playing and we hadn't even unlocked the Panzerfaust yet?
That was bad.
Our squad, like idiots, were trying to run at this enemy tank with our little bundles of dynamite, chucking it at it. It is just killing us all the time, one after the other. Our tank, we have a tank on our team, nothing. It's not doing anything. It's nowhere to be seen. It's like, how is it always the enemy that has the tank that can do stuff? No, I know exactly how you feel. But I think so far, I mean, once those Panzerfaust come out, it's extremely difficult to do well in a tank, which maybe that's part of what they want. They want to focus more on infantry. But I think that kind of fits into a theme now where I think Battlefield 5 might have a weakness compared to Battlefield 1. Because for me, one of the things that really drew me into Battlefield 1 was the ability that if I was on my own, if my friends weren't available, I could hop into Battlefield 1 and I could do really, really well playing solo. There was nothing holding me back. Whatever class I was playing, if I got into a plane, the planes were extremely easy to use solo. You could do really well on those, to the point where they had to nerf the trench fighter, they had to nerf the ground attack plane because they were too effective. The bomber, you had those clips of people going round and round in a bomber getting banned because they were getting so many kills that the auto system, the auto anti-cheat system was getting triggered and banning them because they were so effective in the bomber. So going from that to the vehicles now in Battlefield, which needs support, you need help, you're not so effective, you're easily overwhelmed, plus the attrition system where even as an infantryman, you're not as capable as you were before. It's not as easy anymore. And I feel like it's great when you have friends to play with, like any multiplayer game. But the great strength of Battlefield 1 was that anyone could hop in at any time and have a good time and have a successful game. I think that's not so much present in Battlefield 5, especially also without the ability to ping. 3D spotting, which was again in Battlefield a great tool because it was non-verbal communication, right? I could be playing with a whole team of other people. They didn't have to have voice comms with me. We didn't need to be on Discord or TeamSpeak or whatever we're using, because you can just click Q on an enemy and they're being marked on the map. They're being marked in real life. People can communicate easily without being in a squad, without being on voice comms. That also now has been removed in Battlefield. It's much harder to stay situationally aware. Where is the enemy? Where are they coming from? It's great when you have friends and you can give call-outs, but when you're not, your squad automatically, instantly becomes less effective. So I think Battlefield 5 is still going to be great fun as a multiplayer game if you're playing with friends. I think it's just those were particular strengths of Battlefield 1 that we most likely won't see to the same degree.
But if you let's take this conversation we're having about attrition and with squads, because I think we're all on the same page that Battlefield 5, it almost demands that you play with a well-organized squad in order to get the most out of it. And now you go into Battle Royale, which Battlefield, I mean, this ball was teed up for them. They were ready to hit a home run out of the park. Battlefield has everything already built into the game to make a great Battle Royale. And then they announced that their Battle Royale will be squads only. And I'm just shaking my head at this point. Again, just another in the long line of mistakes for Battlefield 5, in my opinion, because you're okay for the hardcore Battlefield player. That's fine. They'll probably go right into that. They're going to feel right at home. Good. But you can't tell me the purpose of you going to Battle Royale is to try to attract that audience. And one of the huge appeals to Battle Royale is being able to go solo. I hop into a Battle Royale. I play by myself. I don't rely on comms. I don't rely on anything. I go and I do my thing. If I'm king of the hill, great. If I'm not, I hop out and into another game. Away I go. I'm not squadding up. So you're basically eliminating a whole group of that Battle Royale casual audience that has no interest in playing your Battle Royale game mode that could have been very successful, but instead will probably not do anything to sell this game. It's going to be an added benefit to the people who would already buy this game, but it is not going to sell this game.
I agree with that. I think they've messed up there, and there's still time because I don't think that's going to come on launch, is it? Battle Royale. I think it's part of the live service that comes later. So my feedback to them would be to have duos and to have solo play as well. Now I get it. Battlefield is meant to be a squad-based game, but there's nothing wrong with having that solo experience anyway. And let's face it, when you go and play team deathmatch or game mode like that in past Battlefields, you're probably not playing with your squad. You probably are just hopping in for a few quick games. So I think they should do that. And they're missing a trick if they don't, because the big streamers like Dr. Disrespect, like Shroud, they tend to hop into these Battle Royale games a lot of the time and play them on their own. That's not to say that, Dr. Disrespect was playing Blackout on CoD earlier with another streamer, but a lot of the time they are playing alone. And I think you're going to lose a little bit of that coverage with these big streamers if you just have it as a squad-based game. So I hope they sort that out. Also, other news, Battle Royale isn't actually even being developed by DICE. I saw news that Criterion are working on that, which is, they are another EA studio, more known for car games and stuff. Because some of the criticism leveled at EA and DICE is that it's taken away a team that could have been working on the core gameplay experience from DICE. But it's come out that Criterion are working on it, and they're the guys that did Starfighter Assault in Battlefront 2, which, a lot of us, we're not really big fans of that game, but the Starfighter Assault was really well done. That was actually, in my opinion, one of the best parts of that whole game. So that's something that I think is kind of a positive, that they have a whole studio working on it apart from DICE. But, I mean, from my point of view, I think it would have been nice if they just did a separate game. Free-to-play, Battle Royale game. Don't tack it onto Battlefield. Just, because obviously it's on the Battlefield to help sell the game, because a lot of people aren't really interested in Battlefield. They'll buy it for the Battle Royale. But I think they could have just done a standalone. That would have been cool.
Yeah, I think I would only echo what you've mentioned. It kind of takes the issue of Battlefield 5, the core game that we've mentioned, and it makes it even worse, because now you're in a Battle Royale mode with squads of 4. If you're in there with 4 random dudes, hardly communicating, not really pulling in the same direction, and you come against a squad of people who are on voice comms, they're going to destroy you every time. That's how it's like imagine going into PUBG squad gameplay as a solo and playing with 3 other random players against organized squads. It's not something you'd ever do. It's not something that anyone ever does, really, is it? So opening that up to individual or duos is almost a must in the long run. The other thing I'm thinking about, and you mentioned that for CoD as well, was vehicles. But if you have something to add, Pete, I'll let you say that first.
Well, I was just going to say, they do in the, I'll put this on my screen actually, but in the press release, I suppose, on their website about the Battle Royale mode, they talk about objectives and stuff like that. So they're trying to do a few interesting things, because it would, imagine you're capping an objective and it gives you something as a reward, maybe a vehicle or something. So I could see them trying to do something a little bit more along those lines, which would keep the core Battlefielders happy that want it to be a team play experience. But still, I think there's room to have solo play and duos in there. Also, the other news is I believe it's 64 player only. And didn't COD come out as being, what is it, 80?
Yeah, 84.
84.
So 80 or 84. Maybe it is only 80, but I mean, that's shocking because Battlefield already had 64. So they literally made zero improvement on what they were willing to handle.
I mean, you can focus those players with the ring. You can force them close together, but it's that kudos thing of saying, I've got 100 players in my game. And you would have thought that
if you were to tell me a month ago which studio or which game is more likely to have 100 players, Call of Duty or Battlefield, I would have said Battlefield. They already have 64. You know, Call of Duty's been playing 6 versus 6 for how long? It's going to be impossible for them to hit 100 players, but Battlefield's already at 64. Just bump it up to 100 seems natural. And it's the other way around. It's just tack another check mark beside Battlefield list of mistakes. It's again, it probably won't affect gameplay very much at all, but it's just another PR thing.
What about vehicles in Battle Royale games in general? How did they work in Call of Duty? How do they work in Call of Duty?
They're only used for transportation other than the helicopter your teammates can shoot out of. So it's a a little bird helicopter that your teammates are sitting out of the side of. So if you're flying by something, they can shoot out of it. But you don't actually shoot or in a four-wheeler, there can be somebody on the back who can shoot. So it's kind of like PUBG in that respect.
Okay. That
the vehicles are only used for transport, but anybody who's a passenger can shoot their weapon out of them.
And they're just placed around the map?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that makes perfect sense, and that's kind of like a well-known formula. In Battlefield, though, there will be tanks, right? There's like one squad will find a tiger all of a sudden. So, I mean, okay, the vehicles are kind of toothless so far in Battlefield, but that's still an interesting concept.
You get 6 kills, you get to the end, and then some guy rolls around and mows you down in a tank. Yeah. You've got nothing to take it out with.
Imagine
you got to think that they know that's an issue and they're trying to resolve it. But
imagine if you haven't even found anti-tank weapons yet, and all of a sudden there's a tank and you can't harm it. There's nothing you can do.
And you're in the end circle 1v1.
Oh man, yeah. So, there we go, those 2 games. Any other games that you guys have played this week?
No, just Grim Sky, obviously, and I would be playing more. I would have played more Battlefield had it not lined up with the Grim Sky release. But with the Grim Sky release, I'm just, I've been really excited to get my ranks done, my placement matches and stuff. But so just Siege, Battlefield for a couple games, and then Blackout for a couple games.
How about you, Pete?
Siege, Battlefield, and Football Manager.
Oh yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I've won they call it the Champions Cup, but I'm going to call it, Champions League. I've won that with Cambridge United, so I'm a bit of a hero in Cambridge at the minute. But no, but mostly I've been trying to get the most out of this Battlefield beta as well, and record a little bit of gameplay, and I'm working on a Siege video too. So yeah, those are the games.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, I suppose I can add a little bit. Last week I did mention I was playing mostly an old game. I was playing Assassin's Creed Origins. And I think sort of last week we were sort of towards the end of the talk, and I kind of just listed the positives about the game. I want to take just a little moment. I won't go too much into detail on an older game, but I think there's also some things they changed, which in retrospect I want to add that maybe weren't all that well advised. Like, one of the things about the newest Assassin's Creed is that you have this RPG element, almost a JRPG element. If you hit someone with a sword, little numbers pop out of their head for the damage you're doing, and you're constantly collecting random weapons. From any animal you kill, you collect fangs and beaks and, I don't even know, skulls, skins. From enemies, you're constantly collecting weapons, and there's almost this sort of meta game of constantly managing your inventory, of breaking down your weapons so that you can put them into items that make your character better, give you more health or more damage. It's just it's kind of like a half-hearted attempt, I almost feel, at taking the game and making it a little bit RPG-like. And whereas in sort of past Assassin's Creed games, you always had your abilities and gadgets evolve throughout the game, throughout the story, or throughout side quests. Like you mentioned last week, I think you go to Leonardo da Vinci, and he will, after a few side quests, he will give you a new gadget, something like a hang glider or something like that. That's kind of been done away with, and now you just have a straight-up leveling system. So every enemy you kill will just level you up over time. All the side quests will give you XP, and everything is tied to that, which I just find an odd choice. Like, you'll be picking up weapons all the time at your level. So you're level 26, you're picking up level 26 swords and spears, and I don't even know what bows, 5 different types of bows. And then as soon as you level up, you're finding them at the next level, which just means that you're constantly churning through these weapons, which become redundant because you're finding one that's just that little bit better. And it's just this, it just leads to this odd meta game of managing your inventory, which isn't terrible. Let's say that way. I'm still having a really good time with the game, but it's an odd thing to see in Assassin's Creed. It makes the whole game feels more gamey. Whereas before you felt like you were traveling back in time, and sure, the backstory has always been you're in a simulation, but you felt as if you were in history, you felt as if you were doing it. Now it's kind of really gamey. It's like literally numbers popping out of an enemy when you hit them. So there's just that to balance that out a bit. I've also been playing more Insurgency Sandstorm, venturing into the multiplayer a little bit more, and enjoying that. It's quite good. It's pretty decent. It's solid. And I think one of the things I really appreciate with that game as well is something we've already touched upon, is that when I'm on my own, I can just jump into the co-op, which is PvE. You have this mission to go through with 7 other players or something. There's 8 of you, and you can have a go at that. There's voice comms in the game, so you can talk to each other, which almost no one does, but then there you go. It's there. And you can have a decent time in there. Obviously, it's even more fun when you have an organized squad to play with. And then for the multiplayer, I think it's best to have at least a couple of friends with you so that you can be a little bit more coordinated, and you'll have a great time there as well. You can solo queue that if you want to, but I find there the experience is better if you have friends to play with. And the alternative then is just quite a solid sort of co-op mode that is a stand-in for when I don't have anyone to play with. I'm just jumping in on my own for a little bit. So quite happy with that game, although there was a patch update, I think on the 6th, so 4 days ago, which did fix a lot of the things in the game, made it a little bit better. I think hit detection was one of the big things that changed that players were happy about. And also they added more options into the advanced graphics options, which is great. One of the things I did is I turned down the anisotropic filtering from 8 to 4 times, and instead of 60 to 80 FPS, I'm now getting 120, 125. So it's now running quite well. Although with that patch, I personally have already also been experiencing frame drops, which is a little bit disappointing. The last thing you want when you're swinging around to shoot at an enemy is that as you're swinging, all of a sudden your frames go down to 10 FPS for half a second. So that's something new that I've been experiencing since the last patch. Still pre-release, the game's not out yet, so hopefully something they are aware of and hopefully something they will tackle. So there's that. Maybe one last thing before we move on to the DreamHack discussion and go over Pro League stuff a little bit. Something I've been wanting to talk about a little bit, something I've talked about on Twitter, and I mentioned it earlier, is sort of the one-hit kill headshot mechanic. It's a fundamental part of certainly Rainbow Six. It's also a part of Insurgency. Not many other games, though. I think very limited in some other games. So let's talk a little bit about that and your thoughts on that mechanic. I'll save mine for after.
I guess it kind of, at the end of the day, I think that the one shot headshot does increase the skill ceiling. If you get on, R6 stats and you start looking up players all the way from the best players in the world to the bottom, you will see that their headshot percentage of the percentage of kills they get at the highest level with headshots is significantly higher than in the average player. And that's because their aim is better and their skill is higher. So it does increase the skill. With that said, it also makes the game less beginner friendly, because as a beginner, you're going to go in, you're not going to have a chance to react to anybody shooting at you. You're just going to die. And, that can be frustrating. It also, when you couple one-shot headshots with high fire rate weapons, inherently, it increases the random luck factor that you will luck into headshots. And that's going to happen from time to time. But at the end of the day, I do think it's a good thing. I think no matter what, any game should reward headshots, whether it's a one-shot headshot or just a damage multiplier, is a better discussion. But just saying that headshots shouldn't matter at all, I completely disagree with that. So that's really my thoughts on it.
I don't really have a lot to add. I know Rogue is against it, which is why he's going last. He would remove it from the game. So I'm waiting for that.
That's a presumption.
Yeah, I know. Well, let's see, shall we? I'm in favour of it for the reasons that Flank said. It does reward skill, and in a way, it kind of separates Siege out from the pack. It's a hardcore game, and it rewards you for being accurate, even if you're just holding an angle for 30 seconds and waiting at head height for someone to run around the corner. You still had to know to hold that angle. So in that sense, it is skill based, and it does reward you for better aim. Though I do agree, there's definitely an element of luck in getting headshots, and I say that as someone that has benefited from that luck a lot of the time with the random recoil. You shoot kind of at the chest and you pray that it just bounces up in the right way and hits them in the head, and I've benefited from that quite a few times. But I wouldn't want it removed from the game, because to me it's very characteristic of Siege, and I do enjoy it. I've never thought I want it to be changed. I think I'd be more upset if it was changed than just leaving it as it is now.
Yeah, fair points. And I'll tell you one thing. I'll preface my little rant, and I'll say that I don't think it should be removed from Rainbow Six.
Okay.
I think not only is it just become an integral part and it's important, it would just change the nature of Rainbow Six so much that it would be a detriment to the game to take it out, especially, and I think this is maybe the main part, in Rainbow Six you only have one life, you only have one health pool, and apart from Doc on the defender side, if you've taken any damage at all, you can't regain that. There is no regen, there are no health packs, there's nothing you can do. And the thing is, if you're a skilled player and you are doing the right things, you're getting the drop on enemies, you're flanking them, you're getting them from behind, you're opening fire first, you're more accurate, you should be able to win gunfights and you should be able to see the game out in its entirety. And the thing is, with a 5-player game with permadeath and no health regen, if you had gunfights that were sort of competitive in a way that if someone starts shooting at you, you have enough time to spin on them and fire a few shots back. You'll still lose the gunfight, but you have that opportunity to compete in that gunfight. What that would do in Rainbow Six is a skilled player would go in and they would win their gunfight, but they'd take a bullet or two. They'd take some damage. They'd go into the next fight and they'd take maybe another bullet or two. And then you go into your third fight and you're going to lose it, because by that time, just the mounting damage has just reduced you to a point where you're not competitive anymore. And that would be something that would be just almost game-breaking in Rainbow Six Siege. So I understand why it's there. I understand why it's a good thing. But yes, I think like you've highlighted, it is just a source of infinite frustration. And you look at other games, some of the most hated weapons in Battlefield 1, which was the sort of the other large game I've played over the last few years significantly, the most hated weapons in that game were some of the shotguns on assault that would kill you in one hit. the sniper rifles with their sort of sweet spot mechanic and the one-shot headshot mechanic. They would be absolutely hated as well. And then you got sort of the high fire rate, again, assault class weapons that could spray you down like in an instant and you wouldn't have a time to react. So in other games, again, it's the weapons that have that capability of reducing a competitive gunfight to something that is just instantly over, that were the source of frustration for most players, which is interesting because Battlefield 5 now is being purposefully walked back to a more insta-death style of gameplay, right? Okay, so only the sniper rifles have one-hit kill headshots, but still all the other weapons now have such a short time to kill that, again, if someone starts shooting at you, you're not going to be able to compete with that, really. You have no chance to react. And that is in response to, I think, a lot of very loud voices reacting to Battlefield 1. But at the same time, the thing that I find rather interesting is that, especially in Battlefield 1, the most hated weapons were the ones that killed quickly. Now, bringing it back to Rainbow Six, the only thing that really, really bothers me is that it has an effect on the meta, how the game is to be played. Rainbow Six is a peeking game. That's what decides the gunfights. 9 out of 10 gunfights are basically quick peeking, or just sort of this sort of weird angle holding and then popping out so that only one half of one eyeball is showing and just being able to insta-kill someone. And it's something that you, if you're playing Rainbow Six and you want to be successful at it, that you just have to embrace and have to learn to deal with, learn to avoid sort of what I would almost call, I mean, Rainbow Six has great netcode. We've seen Battle Nonsense run the objective tests. Rainbow Six has, comparatively to other games, a very good netcode. It works well, especially after all of these sort of server updates that they've gone through to improve the experience more and more. And yet you still have that sort of opportunity where if you're the player who's moving, your chances of winning a gunfight just rise exponentially. And if I think sort of in a real life, of course it is a game, but it's a game emulating real life. If I'm hidden away in a room and I know the enemy's going to come through that doorway, 99 times out of 100, he doesn't have a chance because I'm pre-aimed. I know where it's coming from. In Rainbow Six, pre-firing and sort of peeker's advantage can make you lose fights that you think you shouldn't have been losing. And maybe that's an experience thing. Maybe that's something that just with practice you can wrap your head around and you just get used to. But for me, that's always, even when I was actively playing several times a week and just really regular in the game, it was always something that rubbed me up the wrong way. Because I think netcode is not what should be a factor in deciding gunfights.
You're absolutely right. I mean, at the higher levels in Siege, the person who's sitting still is at a huge disadvantage, and it's really strange and it's really frustrating at times to know that I'm holding a really skinny angle on this door. I'm in a far more superior position than the enemy player. He knows where I am. He peeks, pre-fires, I'm dead, and it's an exploitation of the mechanics of an online game. It's not an exploitation of Rainbow Six Siege. It's an exploitation of the nature of playing a game that is an online game against people who could be living, 500, 600, 700 miles away from you. And that sucks. But at the same time, that person who did that quick peek, that is difficult to pull off as well. There is a skill element there. Absolutely. So it kind of goes both ways in my mind.
Yeah, very fair. There's something that just occurred to me. Of course, I've lost my train of thought now. Hang on. It'll come back.
While you're thinking,
yeah,
I think just embrace it. It's just kind of what Rainbow Six Siege is. And if you touched upon it, but if you increase the time to kill, so it takes longer, more bullets, 2 or 3 shots to the head, then I think that decreases the skill gap because at the moment you could have one really good player could take someone on, end them really quickly with one headshot. They could turn around and see another person and end them, and then move on to the next corridor and see someone else. But if it's a point where they've got to put 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 bullets into someone, and then they've then got to go and take someone else on, and then they're reloading, I think that reduces the skill of the game. So I do get a lot of your concerns about it, but I think ultimately we all come out at the same place here, which is that you can't really change it now anyway. And I like it, but it is I benefit from it, so you know.
Yeah, I think essentially we've arrived, even though with vastly different opinions of it, we've arrived at the same conclusion. And the thing that I was going to say that has come back to my mind is that actually we've also seen the developers taking active steps to try and improve the gameplay in that way. Because if you think about what used to be the most effective tactics in a gunfight, quick peeking, drop shotting, what else was there? There was all of these things that have been patched out to take that element out of the game as far as possible. Oh yes, there was the sort of rebalancing of speed, 3 speeds being made slightly slower, 1 speed slightly faster. So in all fairness, steps have been taken to reduce that aspect of the game, and that's always a good thing.
The one thing that I would say that I think that we can make, this is a fair point when you're looking at the one-shot headshot mechanic, is maybe if you were to go back to the beginning of this game, you might take every gun in the game right now and their rate of fire and maybe dial it down like 10%, something like that, just to not let the rate of fire really dictate what makes a good gun and what doesn't. Because I think we've seen that. You take the SMG-12, for example. That gun has always had pretty crazy recoil. It's even crazier now after Operation Grum Sky. But the high rate of fire made it a godlike weapon because the recoil would just take you up into somebody's head. And there you go. You got a headshot. So I think that maybe that is a fair point you could say about the one-shot headshot mechanic, that maybe we should have not had the rate of fire get so out of control.
Yeah, I wonder how much flexibility they could have had, because I think sort of most of the weapons are actually relatively realistic in terms of their rate of fire. Right. And also I think the issue you mentioned, like it should have been done from the beginning, because try now and walk that back. Try now taking some of the most loved weapons in the game and making them worse. And interesting that you mentioned that. While I was in Paris, there was a very brief discussion that I had, or was part of, with Leroy Athanasov, the game director. And the discussion was focused on Tachanka. And his main concern with taking his LMG and giving it to him as a primary weapon was the rate of fire. And he specifically said, like, okay, it's going to be something like Frost's gun. It's going to just be chugging along at a slow fire rate. And in our game right now, high fire rate is the thing. It's the thing that wins gunfights. And so he was sort of saying, well, yes, we could take Tachanka's machine gun and we could give it to him to carry around, but it wouldn't be a good gun. It would be something that wouldn't be fun to play in a game with fast fire rate as the meta. Yeah. Interesting that as well. Okay, though. Maybe towards the end when we take questions, it'll be interesting to see sort of what viewers think on that topic as well. And we can come back to that at the end. I think now we had DreamHack Montreal over the weekend. Really interesting, I think, to look at that, because the outcomes were quite surprising and definitely something to talk about there. If you haven't seen the games yet, if you're trying to avoid spoilers, I would recommend maybe coming back later or just taking it away, because we are going to be discussing the outcome of those matches. So you've been warned. Spoiler alert. Let's have a look then. I've actually got the Liquipedia results page, so that's quite good to look at, because it just gives us everything at a glance. I'm going to bring that up on my screen. And let's have a look. So we had 4 groups in this tournament. Each group, as is customary at DreamHack, had a bring your own computer team. So basically, DreamHack, everyone can turn up. As long as you're bringing your own computer, you can get together a team, go to DreamHack. You go into a massive room. I think at one point, Parker Mackay Intero mentioned that on stream, that there's like 2,000 people with their own PCs in this massive hall, all of them competing to get into the group stages to play against the pros. So we have one of those in each group, plus then 3 pro teams who chose to take part. And yeah, let's maybe go through those groups and look at the results, because it was quite interesting. One of the things I think that was a theme in all 4 groups, sadly, was that the bring your own computer teams, the ones that battled through hundreds of other teams to get into this opportunity, yeah, they were all 2-0'd. Like, they hardly won anything. I think one of the teams, which was Honor Esports, was a bring your own computer team. They managed to take 8 rounds out of the 4 maps that they played, and they were the most successful ones. Yeah. So on paper, I guess DreamHack, a great idea, but really hard to actually achieve and reach that dream.
I think it has the BYOC is going to be a reflection of where the event is held. So whenever it was held in Austin, there were some the BYOC teams that rose up were actually pretty well-known teams. You had Disrupt Gaming, that was a BYOC game from Austin that did well and eventually actually beat Evil Geniuses and made it to the semifinals, I believe. Yep. And then you also had Beast Coast Gaming, which is now Cloud9. More on them later. That was a BYOC team, I believe, for DreamHack Austin. But when you're in Montreal, not to say that there's not good teams in Canada. Obviously, there's a lot of really good players, but if you're asking a small org with very limited income to send a team to Austin within their country or to Montreal, which is outside of the country, it might be different as far as the expectations there.
Yeah, very good point. So I don't know if you've got the results open. Should we look at these, or should we just look at sort of standouts? Because I think you mentioned Cloud9, and I'm going to say they were the big surprise, because if we think about the beginning of last season, Cloud9 were a joke, right? Their very first match, they got 6-0'd. It was a horrible start. Cloud9, of course, a huge name in esports, massively known internationally, and then they come into Rainbow Six, they pick up a team, and it just all... I think that maybe, in all fairness to the players, was maybe something that made it harder for them. Because if you think about, okay, here's Beast Coast, they're a Challenger League team, they've now just about made it into Pro League, it's their very first time, they've not been playing together for all that long, off they go, and oh well, they lost their first match, and they're kind of only warming up throughout the season. And towards the end of the season, they were getting a little bit better, but if that had happened, no one would have said anything. But here is the mighty Cloud9 making their entry into Rainbow Six, and they just got hammered at the beginning of the season, which then just made them a target, I think, and made the players a target more so than if they hadn't been under the Cloud9 banner. But to bring the story round to DreamHack, they did extremely well. They were in their Group A, they were the only team who won both of their matches, and they beat Evil Geniuses. So that's a great performance. Emerged from there, went into the playoff stages, and just 2-0'd everyone they came up against until they won. They won DreamHack, Cloud9, and they 2-0'd everyone.
Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch. I think they seem like a really likable team, and I was very happy. I was rooting for them, even though they were up against your namesake. I thought DreamHack was a brilliant event, and I think the biggest thing to come out of it for Cloud9 is they get to go to the Invitational in Montreal, which is the big one, particularly with the sort of prize money that will be on offer there for a team that does well. So, congratulations to them. Fully deserved. I forget what the question was, but there was something else I wanted to say. So what was the question?
I'm not sure I asked the question.
Did you, so I watched most of the event. Did you see the match? Core, they were a team of people that brought their own computer, and they did really well, and they got to play one of the one of the teams in the just
they played Rogue and Mouse Sports. And,
so one of them, I think the Rogue one was on stream, wasn't it?
I think it was Mouse Sports that was on stream.
How was it?
Yeah, and
I was rooting for them.
That was it's so cool. That's such an interesting element of DreamHack to see the BYOC teams, able to compete, and I think that's obviously one of the really cool things. I think you're right, Rogue, that Cloud9, obviously that's the story. The fact that they won. I think that you have to look at Cloud9 pre Mark the Shark and post Mark the Shark. As soon as they brought Mark the Shark on to their roster, it's been a different team, and they've been on the rise. But even though they've been doing better towards the break, for them to come in here and win was really surprising. And not only win, but on the way to winning, they beat Evil Geniuses, they beat Mouse Sports, they beat Millennium, and they beat Rogue. And that's nothing to sneeze at. And they won 2-0s. One of the things that jumped out to me with this event was how entertaining the matches are. Yes, Cloud9 won every match 2-0, but every single one of those maps pretty much went to overtime. And that was really, after the Paris Major, the final went 6-2, 6-2, 6-2, just really kind of a snooze fest because it wasn't even competitive. It was really cool to watch some really competitive Siege. That's one of the things that jumped out to me. I was worried at one time that Cloud9 was going to be another CLG. We saw CLG pick up the Elevate roster, and then we saw that roster get relegated, and then that roster dissipated. And now CLG, one of the biggest esport organizations in the world, is no longer involved in Siege. And I was really worried that was going to be the same thing with Cloud9. And I think with this title, this is going to do a lot to cement Cloud9's status within Siege. And I'm really happy for that. I'm really happy for all the people I've gotten to know, Fox A, as well as Goddess. Personally, I've been able to hang out with both of them at previous events. Really happy for them. One of the things outside of Cloud9 that I do want to mention that was a big surprise to me was SK Gaming 2-0ing Team Secret. If you would have asked me going into this event, who was the best team in this event, I would have said Team Secret. Team Secret probably played G2 the closest of anybody at the Paris Major. Team Secret won the previous DreamHack. Team Secret won the previous they've been on a roll. They've been playing really well. And so it was surprising to me to see SK play them as closely or beat them. That was probably the one of the other big surprises to me outside of Cloud9. But overall, great event. Really happy for Cloud9. And it's nice that NA has finally won an event. Do you guys realize the last time that a North American team won an event was the Invitational in 2017, the first Invitational?
Yeah.
When Cloud9 won on stream, there was loads of people going, Europe trash, NA best, Europe sucks, we're a G2 now. All that stuff. Were you watching? I thought that was really fun.
We're a G2 now. They didn't take part, right?
No.
It always boils down to that. But I have to say I was also surprised that Team Secret, I think it was a relatively close game. I mean, a lot of these games, you see 2-0, and you think, oh, well, that was steamrolled. But actually, I think especially Cloud9 Millennium, it went into overtime on both maps, and it was a 6-7 on both maps. So the end score was actually 12 rounds to Millennium and 14 to Cloud9. It could not have been closer. And I think actually Millennium, they certainly lost the first map on a huge mistake with a 2-on-1 with the diffuser already planted, Millennium on attack, and then the last defender on Cloud9, not sure who it was anymore, managed to take out one of the attackers and then just went for the diffuse and stuck it, and the last guy on Millennium couldn't take him out. That was a misplay of quite significant proportions, and that gave Cloud9 the first map. Second map was Millennium's at first, like they went 4-1, I think, for the first half. So they were really running away with it, and Cloud9 caught up and ended up taking that. So extremely close. I think Team Secret SK was also close. I think it was closer than it would have appeared. And I think also when SK played Rogue, again, very, very close. And again, I was also surprised. I mean, SK is at the moment the top team in North America. For them to get beaten by Rogue with 2 maps was, I would say, that was also a bit of a surprise for me. Rogue, obviously one of the best teams, not only in North America, but the world. But yeah, obviously as the undisputed leader of the North America region, I would have said that SK should have had that one maybe as well. And they lost against Millennium too in the 3rd place match.
There's been some murmurs, and I don't necessarily believe this, but there are some people, and it appears that there is a trend here that maybe SK benefits more than anybody else from the best of one. The fact that SK does have some kind of off the cuff strats that they can throw out, which in a best of one on one map can work and can throw the enemy, the other team enough to where you can get one map out of it. But if you're playing a best of 3, then you're going to need to have a more sustained approach to success. And there are some people who say that SK are benefiting from that best of one. I don't believe that. I think SK is a great team. I think that they were the 4th place team in this. So it's not like they didn't play well. They made it out of groups, and there's a lot of teams that didn't. Space Station is right up there in North America. They didn't make it out of groups. So I think that SK is good. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying there.
Maybe touching on what we spoke about last week at length, Evil Geniuses coming in 8th.
Yeah. Evil Geniuses has some issues. I think that maybe this was a good learning experience for them, and I think that I still think that potentially this roster could be better with Geo than it was previously, but I think this event's timing was not good for them. You can see Rogue brought on 2 new players, and they were able to go to the finals. But so that I think that says a lot about them. But EG didn't look nearly as organized as what Rogue did. I don't know what's going on exactly with EG, to be completely honest with you, but there's something not right there. And I think that almost they would have benefited from staying at home and taking the time to scrim. But then the other way of looking at it is I'm sure they learned a lot from this event. With having Geo on, this was probably a great learning experience for them. But as far as the results, it's clearly not where we're used to seeing them.
And at the end of the day, I think there was sort of a consensus after they poached 2 players from Rogue. At least
Geo came from Rogue.
Yeah.
So, and then Rogue beat them, by the way.
Exactly. So everyone was sort of in the last round of player exchanges saying that Evil Geniuses came out on top, especially versus Rogue, since they took one of their top players, and then Rogue came in and took 2 maps against them and knocked them out.
Yeah, and I think maybe what we're looking at here, Rogue took 2 players, plugged them into a system that they already have in place, and the only thing that changed is the faces and maybe slight personality shifts as far as who they brought on. To me, it looks like Evil Geniuses is kind of going back to square one and maybe rebuilding. I don't know. It's been well documented that BC has been the IGL this season for them, taking over that responsibility from Canadian. And I don't know. Maybe they're changing something on that front again, but something doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I think they gave. Oh yeah, no, you get it.
Well, I was just going to say, Rogue haven't changed their coach, which is another thing. So
yeah,
he's still there, Ranger. They're still operating off his plan, what they've come up with together. Whereas the recruitment of Geo into EG feels like he's a different sort of player to Necrox, so maybe they're trying to utilize him in a different way and just try for some completely different strategies that they're going to build up over the next season and as we move towards the next major.
Yeah, I think something they mentioned themselves was that they brought on Geo as sort of a mid-round shot caller, or certainly a mid-round call maker, which is something they'd identified as a weakness. I'm not even into the competitive side enough to understand exactly the dynamics there, that you have someone who specializes on the middle of the round dynamics. But there you go. That was sort of the explanation, certainly, that I'd mentioned.
Gio's always really been known as a very good communicating player, like somebody who he communicates very well. And I think what they mean by that mid-round shot caller is somebody who can see, you can be mid-round, they can identify weaknesses and the defense setup at that time on the fly, and then adjust your attack specifically. I think about this more on the attack than the defense, according to what that defense setup is going to give you.
Yeah. And
I do think that's a strength that Gio has that I've heard from multiple people throughout time.
Yeah, so you might be on border trying to get in through Armory, and then you might have the call to rotate all the way around and then go for the other objective. It might be something like that, depending on what the defensive setup is, where they're situated, and if it's going to be easier just in the last minute and a half to just move everyone.
Right.
So that's actually quite a key aspect. It's something that Penta do quite well as well. I've seen them just, they're going one way and then they just all switch up straight away, and then they all disappear around the other side of the map. So
yeah.
That was also while I was thinking about Cloud9 and sort of the struggles they had throughout the first half of the season up until now, up until finding sort of their feet. That sort of made me think, now that you mentioned Penta, it made me sort of think about the way that larger organizations come into Rainbow Six. You sort of have the Cloud9 approach of just, well, here's a Challenger League team that have just come in and we'll pick those up and roll the dice on them. And then you have G2 that just goes, yeah, we'll pick the best team in the world and pick those up and just launch themselves into the scene as undisputed, the best team, essentially. Which I just found was quite interesting to see those two different philosophies and how they've played out. And I think, Flank, you also mentioned CLG as something in parallel to Cloud9 there.
Yeah, really. I'm extremely happy for Cloud9, man. I'm so happy that them as an org. I think it's only going to be good for the game that Cloud9 has a very heavy presence within Rainbow, and knowing for sure that they're going to be at the Invitational means a lot to me, and I think to the game overall. And again, just that roster in general, like how easy would it have been for them to be completely demoralized? I think 2 of their first 3 matches in Pro League under the Cloud9 banner were 0-6s, and it would have been so easy for them just to completely just bury their head and say this isn't going to work. But they made a roster change, not a drastic roster change, the one person, and they've kept grinding it out, and you can see the drastic improvement, and it's so good to see. Especially, it also does kind of go to show that the team that won this event is the team that didn't make a roster change. While the NA shuffle was going on after Paris, you saw Rogue make changes, you saw EG make changes, you saw Space Station make changes, you saw Mouth Sports bring on England. A lot of stuff happened in NA. SK brought on a new coach, didn't change any of the roster, but the team that didn't change anything is the team that won this event, and maybe that's a lesson to NA.
Yeah, I suppose maybe some of the changes you're making them as an investment into the future for the long run. So, but yeah, I fully agree. Obviously, in the short run, there's going to be issues with figuring out everything and becoming fully efficient again. And maybe that is it. And I mean, like I was saying earlier, despite sort of all of the 2-0s that we saw, Cloud9 still had to fight their way through this competition. It was very, very close on several occasions. So yeah, good on them. And if anything, that makes me kind of excited about tomorrow when Pro League in NA starts again, and see how everyone does.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun season.
So with that, I think let's wrap it up with our regular end of podcast segment. If there's any questions, any comments about what we've been talking about, feel free to post those in the chat now, and we'd be happy to take any questions, take any comments, have a bit more of a discussion to round things out.
I got one earlier that I noticed that I wanted to bring up real quick that I think is pretty interesting. He was asking, I'm on PS4, which one should I get? Battlefield or Call of Duty. There's so much that goes into that. It's tough to know without knowing your tendencies. But I will say that this is the best Call of Duty that's been released since the last Black Ops. I don't know that Battlefield 5 is that you can necessarily say the same, that it's that this Battlefield 5 is going to stick out that much above its predecessor. So, you know, I think if you like Battlefield, then you'll be able to play Battlefield 5 and have fun. If you like Call of Duty, then you're going to be able to play Call of Duty and have fun. So it just kind of depends on which franchise you like the best.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the fair thing. The experience is still quite different. Despite Call of Duty bringing in bullet drop and vehicles into their Battle Royale modes, the experience, the shooting experience, you have a faster pace, maybe more arcadey of Call of Duty, which has its own sort of benefits and drawbacks. And then in Battlefield, you have the larger maps in general with the bullet flight time, bullet drop, the ballistics modeled in. So you're getting two similar, they're both first-person shooters, but at the end of the day, different experiences. And that's kind of what you need to base your choice on, which one you're really after. I have a question from Timelios, is my guess on the pronunciation there. What's our opinion of Ents signing Sewer as a coach? Ents, I have to admit, personally for me, not on my radar right now, since they're not really in Pro League. There's so many Pro League games going on every week with the 3 different regions that I follow. That's something that's kind of slipped underneath my radar.
I'm not familiar with Sewer, or is that what am I pronouncing that right? Sewer. I'm not familiar with who that is. I'm familiar with Ents, obviously, but not. I mean, like they've gone off my radar this season, so I don't really feel educated enough to comment on that question.
Yeah, same. The timing of it sucks as well for them to get relegated.
Yeah,
for this season.
Yeah, they'll be back. I firmly believe that. I wouldn't be surprised if Shate ends up with them again, but that's kind of a different topic.
I've got a question here. 117 Halo All. Do you think Ubisoft will be able to tell the difference from a booster than a group of friends and people at a LAN center? Also, you are amazing. Which I think he means. I think he means you guys.
Oh yeah, right, Pete. That was on your channel. You are. Pete.
And I said I'd ask it. So, I don't think it really works like that. If you're playing with your brother or your sister or your granddad at home over the same internet, I don't think that's a problem. I don't think you're going to get the problem is more if you're playing together and you're just doing something untoward, which is against the terms of service. If you're just playing with someone on your home network or a LAN, I don't think that's a problem.
I mean, currently the boosting penalties only apply to being boosted by a cheater. Let's be quite clear on that. So it's only if you squad up with someone who is then found to be using hacks. A lot of them do this professionally. They will get paid to bring people up to a new rank. Pay me X amount of hundreds of dollars to get up to Plat 1, to get up to Diamond. And it will be this person who then brings in 4 people who are paying him or her and will use a cheat, a teleportation cheat, one-hit kill cheat, or a aimbot, ESP, all of those great things to then get those players into a rank where they naturally shouldn't belong. That's what is being tackled by the Rainbow Six team, by the developers right now. So if you're squadding up with anyone else, even if it's someone with a vastly different rank at this point, even though that does mess up with the matchmaking, it's not something that's currently persecuted as such. And I don't think it ever will. You're never going to be punished for queuing up with a friend or a family member who is at a very different rank. They may at some point try to limit that because it is being abused by certain players. There are people who will purposefully take a fake account or a secondary account. They will rank that all the way down to copper, and they will then use that to spoof the matchmaking system to give themselves, or give them their friends, more importantly, easier matchmaking. That is something that I think the devs are also aware of and want to tackle going forward, but I don't think we'll ever see punishment for that. You might see a limitation like, okay, you're a copper and you can't queue up with your plat friend anymore because it just breaks the matchmaking so much. What would be even better if they managed to adjust the matchmaking system in such a way that if you've got these vastly differing ranks, that it's the top rank that will be used for the matchmaking, and sort of the lower people who don't fit into that are just kind of ignored rather than forming an average of the two. So if they do that, then there's no problem at all. You're just going to get really hard matches for the person who is at a lower skill, and for the person who's trying to spoof the matchmaking system, take that. You're not going to get any benefit out of it, and you're still going to get crushed, and rightfully so. So I think that's something worthwhile adding there. It's only related to cheating right now. There's no punishment for anything else.
Yeah, I mean, they've been implementing this so far, and I've heard very few false positives of people who, you're always going to have the guy who says, I never played with a hacker. Why did I get, and I got banned for 15 days. But I have a Discord with almost 10,000 people in it. I get stuff like this on a daily basis, people contacting me thinking that I'm actually Ubisoft support, and I'm not. And, of the people who've been banned so far, I have had very, very few people try to make any type of case to me whatsoever, saying that it is a false ban. So I think that speaks to whatever system they are using. The false positives have been technical issues, are my understanding, more than just we thought this guy did, but in reality he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, you see always the people that will complain, like the same thing when they enacted that automatic chat filter that would ban people for extremely offensive or racist terms. When that was enacted, the number of people tweeting publicly saying, hey, Epi, I just got banned for saying nickel, was one of the excuses.
Yeah.
And he looked into it.
And then he looks into it and is like, no, we've actually found that you said something very different. That's what you got banned for. Every time, each and every time. So
yeah, that was kind of funny. I just said nickel.
I don't know where that one even came from. That was such a thing. Everyone was talking about nickel, and it's like, what does that even mean? How is that supposed to be?
Maybe there is a connotation there that I'm not aware of.
I don't know.
Either way, he looked into it and slapped them down.
That was quite good.
It was so good because then they had to apologize and said, yeah, I was talking shite.
Speaking about automated censoring, though, they have that in Battlefield as well. In the Battlefield chat where offensive words get starred out. And I've seen a lot of tweets about really weird words getting banned. White man, DLC, all kinds of...
free DLC is allowed, but DLC isn't. So you can, if you're talking about DLC and potentially not... I mean, free DLC, it's going to be a positive discussion about DLC, but just DLC, no, we can't have that discussion.
I don't know what's going on.
You can talk.
That's so bizarre.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, obviously that's maybe something that's still being tweaked, I'm guessing.
It's strange,
there you go.
man.
Monster 101 says, do we think that Pro League matches should be best of 3 or have infinite overtime, since the best of 1 is being, well, it's been criticized heavily by the pros.
Mm-hmm.
So, thoughts on that?
Best of 3, which I know we discussed this quite in depth last week. I'd have it best of 3 again, sorry. And I'd have every final best of 5.
Best of 3, but every team plays every week. So I'm willing to give up that every team plays every night. Meaning that if NA is playing on Monday, every team's going to play on Monday. But every team needs to play every week, at least once. So best of 3, don't have to fit every game into one night. Maybe you can do NA on Monday and Wednesday. You can do on Tuesday and Thursday. And then I guess that only leaves one day for Latin America. which is, that's a problem. What do you do there? Maybe, but you could combine EU and NA days because of the different times. You would think there would be a way that you could combine those. Like you'd have an EU day. One of those days, like say Wednesday, for example, would be an all day. So in the morning you have my time. In the morning it would be EU, and then in the evening would be NA.
The NA matches for Rogue and I tend to be on fairly late. I mean, we've stayed that we had that whole season where we set up and we'd watch them together and we would talk. Yeah. And for you, you're just sitting down for lunch. For us, it's like 3 a.m. or whatever by the time it's done. But I think some of the issue is, and I think that's a good suggestion, to have a day where they just smash through all of them. Why not? But, because at the end of the day, the casters, they're in Poland. They're not, it doesn't matter really. I mean,
they don't matter. They don't need any time to themselves.
I didn't mean it in that way.
There's no labor laws in Poland.
Just keep them in a cage in the studio.
I didn't mean it in that way. I love them guys. I think they do a great job. But I mean, from the sense that for the NA ones, because they're in Poland in the EU time zone, it's going to screw them up anyway, because they're going to have a late night, just like it's a late night for us, if not worse, because they're in Central European time. But one of the issues is obviously to have more talent, more casters available in the pool. And obviously we had Flynn at the DreamHack just gone by. Bloody brilliant. Stepped up, did an amazing job. In fact, I would go as far as to say some of the moments of the tournament where him just dissecting the plays and just saying, he would, no holds barred, that was a ludicrous move, you didn't have a chance, and then explaining why, not just being horrible, but saying why it was not good. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So if we could have a few more people like him picked up, perhaps they're casting at community events for Rainbow Six Siege, if we could have more people doing it, then maybe we could smash through and do EU and NA in a day or something, if it matched up with the time zones. Because I think, to be fair, you can't have, kicks and interrogate, on the factory line, just casting matches all day.
Like I said, keep them in a cage.
Yeah, well,
I think at one point
maybe some of the matches don't even get casted. If that's the holdup, then maybe
that's how it used to be, though. I'm sure. It definitely used to be like that. Some matches weren't casted, just like if you watch football or something, maybe your team's on this week and they won't be next week. But
no. I want them to be streamed, but maybe you don't
not casted.
Yeah, you would still have the spectator there who would be showing it on stream, but you wouldn't have the caster. If that's the issue, that we're overworking the casters, and that is a very real issue. I mean, you think about it.
I think they could put up 4 duos now of casters. I reckon they could do that if they got Pinky back involved.
Okay,
Pardon?
But I don't think Pinky's in Poland. I think he's only for like events.
Yeah.
You're saying they have the potential to do that.
I said it would be possible.
But once they move people to Poland, you're talking full-time salary. I don't know how the pay works for them, but you're talking like you that's a commitment. So you're gonna have to pay them. Yeah.
Well,
from some M&Ms.
Here's the issue. I think even the way that Pro League is right now, and has been sort of for the first half of the season and is going to be starting tomorrow, I personally say there's already too much Pro League to watch. Yeah. I can't follow all three. I can't follow all 3 of the main regions. I'm like, not even mentioning APAC. I can't even follow Europe, NA, and LATAM. No. I can't. It's not possible. It could be a full-time job trying to watch Pro League. If they add more teams to the casters and they start doing this 5 or 6 days a week, or they do, as you suggested, sort of the different time zones and do just an all-day thing where the first half is EU and then the second half goes into North America. The problem there is that there needs to be, for more effort put in, for more cost expended, for more employees hired to show that kind of stuff, there needs to be also the chance to also grow the audience and have more watch time out of it. And I think they're already even with the format right now, with the one map format, they've already reached a sort of a saturation point where there's so much Pro League that people have to be picky about, I'll watch one match from here, I'll watch one match from the second day, and maybe two from the final day or something, where you're already not getting the full amount of eyeballs. Whereas in past seasons, and I say that from personal experience, based purely on myself, I would have watched every game in every region every week. I can't do that anymore. You add even more to that, I've already reached my personal capacity for how much I can watch, and then how do you justify all of the extra costs of arranging more games, putting more time in, streaming more, when you can't have the growth in viewership at the same time?
Well, I think that we just saw that at DreamHack Montreal. The final had less than 20,000 people watching it. And I think a result of that is a little bit that it came so closely on the heels of Paris that people just the hype wasn't there for it.
Yeah, but they're not promoting it well enough. They're not. There's nothing. You mentioned it to me, and then I was like, "Oh bloody hell, that's on! I'm going to watch that." But if you hadn't said it to me, I wasn't seeing it on social media. I think Counter-Strike put it in the game. There's an event coming up. Tune in and watch it. They need to, if they want people to watch it, and if they want to fund these things, then they could do it with cosmetics and stuff like that for the more Pro League type cosmetics and get people involved in it. But they don't. I don't think it's not obvious enough that this event's going on unless you're really into it and you're following all the Twitter channels and following all the pros. Otherwise, they're not doing enough to promote it, to tell people where they need to go to find out more.
That is a fair point. I don't know how much of an effect it really has, because at the end of the day, if you've watched in the past, you will most likely be subscribed to the Rainbow Six esports Twitch channel or channels, and then you'll get a notification there. It would help to have it in-game. It would help to have it for a whole week or 2 weeks to have it mentioned in-game. And obviously, once you add little presents, Twitch drops and whatever into that, that's when you can bring in even more casual viewers. All fair points, but at the end of the day, like, there's a limit. I think there's a limited market for how much Pro League any given person can have in their life. And if you ramp that up to three maps, and have every team playing, it's more than anyone can consume, is my point.
All right. So, okay, I think it compromises the integrity of the match between two teams to have one map, in my opinion, and I know you might not agree with it, but I think it compromises the integrity of the result to do that, and I think a best of three is better. So if we're going to have a situation where you cannot play all the matches if they're free maps, then let's go back to just picking. This week you're going to see EG and Rogue or whoever, and then next week you'll get to see your team if they're a different team. But so I would rather do that.
Do you remember how harsh those seasons were? I mean, there were teams who lost one game and were done. Think about, Rogue, when they still had King George last season that he played, they went undefeated during, I guess you could call it the seasonal or group stage of that season. They get into the playoff. Mm-hmm. They lose one time to at that time it was Infamy. Infamy goes to LAN and Rogue goes home. They lost one match that entire season.
That was another ridiculous thing that they come up with, where they kept they kept changing the mechanics of how the league system worked. The very first season, I seem to remember it was a league, and then they changed it, and then eventually, about 4 or 5 seasons or whatever in, they went for this weird thing where you go to a playoff, and I think where they're at now is quite good. Just do what you've got now, but play a best of 3. But you don't have to stream them all. Okay. Just pick a couple of games each week.
Oh, you're saying just okay. I gotcha.
That is actually, I think, a valid option. It's certainly a valid option. You have then the issue that maybe the team that you support, you're going to miss for you can only read up on the results. You're going to miss it. You can't watch it. But it's certainly viable. Whereas I think simply taking the format they have now and making it a 3-map format, it just it wouldn't work. It's too much. So, but that's an option. Possibly streaming it uncasted, and you just get to go and look at that.
Maybe having a Bravo stream, just a separate, two separate streaming channels. So you have your main Twitch channel where the marquee matches are, they're casted, everything's normal. Then you have a Bravo streaming channel that is uncasted matches. I can still watch my favorite team play, but I'm not going to have casters and whatever,
Ooh. You'd need a spectator, I guess.
Yep. Yes.
Someone, you could have community casters willing to do it for free, but then you...
Oh, absolutely.
Then
that might not be good.
Some bad publicity, but yeah.
Yeah, very fair point.
So,
obviously, you'd need ESL referees and all of that in there, but it's possible, I think. And I mean, the A and B stream, that's not something that's completely new. That's not something that hasn't been done before. We see that at large tournaments as well during the group stages, where you can pick which stream to watch. So certainly an option. And yeah, and after all of me pushing back against the both of you in your opinion, I think it's undeniable that a single map, the outcome of a single map is not as conclusive as having multiple maps. Like even best of 3 is maybe not enough.
But let's bring back. Can you guys still have the results of the DreamHack up? I know we're running long here, but let's look at the bracket. In that bracket, there were only 2 matches. One out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 total matches in the bracket. Only 2 of those were 2-1s, and we don't know which team won the first map. So, would this result be any different if it was a best of 3? I know that some of the group stages would have been for sure. I'm pretty sure that EG beat Cloud9 the first map and then lost the next 2. But actually in the bracket, how many? I mean, only 6 of the 8 matches for sure would not have had a different result.
Yeah, that's not an unreasonable thing to say, but the point is that it was always a best of 3, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that is... We're just going to change the way a football match is played, and we're just going to have 2 quarters now because that fits better into our TV schedule. Or the World Cup's on, but we're going to play it as one half, and whoever comes in the lead at 45 minutes in is the winner. I just think
I think a better comparison would be the World Cup's on, and we're going to go to penalties straight after regulation instead of having the overtime periods. That would be a better comparison.
I know
in my opinion.
Yeah. I know they've got a whole team of people looking at it, and I do get it is a hard job to. They want to make it. They want to increase the audience and make it so that you can guarantee you'll watch your team. But I don't think, from a competitive sense, that it's better to have just the one map. But that's all.
Absolutely, you're right. There's no denying that.
And the players feel that as well. I think there was this sort of period where I think it was Fabian was making some very, very aggressive, suggestive tweets about something he was going to reveal, and he was pretty worked up. And then he had a discussion with someone in the background, and he said, okay, I'm not going to mention this, but something's going to happen for the better. And I think at the same time, I saw Pengu talking about the best of 1. So my guess at the time was that he was really, really annoyed at the best of 1 format. And what I took away from that whole thing was that he had a discussion with someone, or Penta at the time, as they were now G2 as a team, had a discussion, and that something came out of that made them feel better about it, or something was changing. We've not seen a change. There's been no change announced for the second half of Pro League. But that was what I took away from that at that stage. I don't know if you saw that and remember that.
Ubisoft said, shut up. I'm not joking with you. I mean, they could have been like, shut up. You know what I mean?
He wouldn't say I feel much better. I've had the answers I need. Ubisoft told me to shut the F up, and I will be. No.
I suppose maybe they just told him, look, you do this, we're going to kick you out. You're not going to play Rainbow Six professionally ever again. And he just went, oh, okay, yeah, it's been resolved.
No,
that's not Fabian's personality.
I'm not having that.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't know what happened there either. To be honest with you.
Oh yes, and infinite overtime was one of the things that was mentioned, and it's come back by Monster 101 as well. Is that a solution?
No. You don't. I don't want infinite overtime. I especially not for regular. If you wanted to do that in a final, I would understand that a little bit. And by infinite overtime, what we're saying is that you have to win by 2, no matter what. That's what we're saying. Okay, I could see that in a final, but not in a regular everyday league match. That's just a bit much.
And if we're talking about logistics, the risk there is huge.
I would say get away from the draw. I'm willing to say that. I would rather see the is it the 7-6 or no? Yeah. 7-6 win. Yeah. I'd rather see the overtime that we just had at the DreamHack event than no overtime, than all the draws that we're seeing.
Or just make it sort of 11. There's 11 rounds. You see, because we have this format now where there's first one team attacks 5, then another team attacks 5. If you make it an uneven round count, so that would solve it. There would be no more draws. But then, who gets that round?
Yeah, and was it attack or defense? No matter what, unless you do unlimited, you're resulting in a coin flip, possibly deciding the winner.
Yeah,
that's the problem. But that's why you need balanced maps. If a map is that unbalanced, why is it in the Pro League pool to begin with?
Okay, excellent. So yeah, I think we'll wrap it up at this point. Thank you everyone who joined in. As always, the VOD of this specific podcast, if you missed part of it, will be going up on my channel. We do rotate that every week. If you don't already follow Prodigio Pete and Get Flanked on YouTube and or Twitch, I think Get Flanked you stream very regularly. Pete is more on YouTube. Go and check those guys out. We say it every week. Maybe you know by now. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining in, and see you next time. Bye for now.